Core players of space exploration are relatively few and far between, but the list is growing. India and China are making strides to keep up with and even surpass mature programs like those in the US and Russia. India sent 31 satellites from 15 different countries into orbit, and in early 2017, it sent 104 satellites into orbit at once, the most ever for a single rocket. It surpassed the previous record of 37 set by Russia in 2014. China is set to send an unmanned probe to the moon to bring back the first soil samples in more than 40 years. By 2018, it's expected to be the first country to soft land a probe on the far side of the moon. India and China are also two of 6 space agencies in the Heavy Lift Rocket Club. China joined at the end of 2016, and in June, India successfully launched a satellite into orbit that's several tons and 13 stories tall. And it doesn't look like they're ready to slow down either. In the next 5 years, India plans to send 25 rockets into space and spend $6 billion on its space program. Meanwhile, China is set to build its own space station. Construction will start in 2019, and it's expected to be done by 2022. That's 2 years ahead of the possible retirement of the International Space Station.
You might have seen reports that the number of refugees entering the US has been cut nearly in half since President Trump took office, but it's not quite that simple. The State Department reports more than 13,000 refugees entered the United States from January to March in 2017. In the last 3 months of former President Barack Obama's term, that number was over 25,000. But from January to March in 2016, refugee arrivals were only 12% higher than during the same quarter this year. The timeline distinction matters because the Obama administration increased the number of refugees it admitted shortly before handing the Oval Office over to Trump. That's not to say Trump doesn't want to curb U.S. refugee intake. He sought to cap the number of total refugees entering the states at 50,000 for the 2017 fiscal year. The State Department release also comes as the Supreme Court considers whether to hear and potentially reinstate the administration's travel ban. The ban, which temporarily bars citizens of 6 Muslim-majority countries from entering the U.S., has been blocked by a number of lower U.S. courts. The nation's highest court is expected to announce whether it will hear the case to reinstate the travel ban in the next week.
The United States Department of Homeland Security announced changes to a $10 million government grant program. It narrows the grant's focus around efforts to combat Islamist extremism. The moves shifted money to law enforcement offices and away from groups that combat U.S.-based extremism, which mostly comes in the form of white nationalists. DHS Secretary Kelly said the office would use the grant money to train officers to better recognize and address signs of alienation, which make young people vulnerable to extremism.
Starbucks is moving forward with its plan to hire thousands of refugees despite its initial announcement drawing mixed reactions from consumers. On June 20th, World Refugee Day, Starbucks announced that by 2022 it will employ 2,500 refugees in several of its European markets. They include Great Britain, France, Austria, Switzerland, Spain, Portugal, Germany, and the Netherlands. The coffee giant said it had already started the hiring process. Back in January, Starbucks pledged to hire 10,000 refugees to work in its stores worldwide by 2022, a plan that drew praise from some customers but resulted in others vowing to boycott the chain. The move came in response to President Donald Trump's executive order temporarily banning citizens of 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the U.S. Starbucks also announced it will team up with the International Rescue Committee to help refugees find jobs with other companies.
Facebook has updated its mission statement to reflect Mark Zuckerberg's wish for the social media platform to be a revolutionary force for good. At Facebook's first ever Community Summit, Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg gave a speech where he outlined his wish for Facebook to be a driver in unifying communities and tackling big issues. To reflect how serious he is about this desire, he is changing Facebook's mission statement. Facebook's mission statement used to be to give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected, but is now give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together.
Friday, the Pentagon announced they're reviewing recommendations from the U.S. military chiefs, which include a request to extend the time period for all new transgender recruits to actually join the U.S. Armed Forces be given. Pentagon spokesperson Dana White said a decision on the matter has yet to be made. She said, different services had different takes, so some asked for time. Under the Obama administration, the ban on openly transgender people serving in the armed forces was ended in August of 2016.
As a result of this year-long study, I'm announcing today that we're ending the ban on transgender Americans in the United States military. Effective immediately, transgender Americans may serve openly, and they can no longer be discharged or otherwise separated from the military just for being transgender.
President Trump isn't the only one pushing for travel restrictions. The state of California has its own travel ban, but instead of blocking people from coming in, it blocks state-funded travel to certain places. The state just announced it won't pay to send its employees to Alabama, Kentucky, South Dakota, or Texas anymore. The measure is part of a law that curbs travel to states with laws that target people due to sexual orientation or gender identity. The law was passed in September in response to North Carolina's now defunct House Bill 2. The so-called bathroom bill mandated people use the bathroom that matched the gender listed on their birth certificate. 3 of the new additions, Texas, Alabama, and South Dakota, were added because of laws that could prevent LGBTQ parents from adopting or fostering children. Kentucky was added to the list for a new law that lets student organizations discriminate against LGBTQ classmates. California's Attorney General Javier Becerra said he added the 4 to the Golden State's blacklist because of the, quote, discriminatory nature of laws enacted by those states. They join a growing list. Aside from North Carolina, California also banned state-funded travel to Kansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee.
A video of a young Mormon girl revealing to her congregation that she is a lesbian and still loved by God is sparking a new round of discussions about how the religion handles LGBT issues. The little girl's microphone was turned off by local church leaders. 13-year-old Savannah spoke on May 7th in Eagle Mountain, Utah, about her belief that she is a child of heavenly parents who didn't make any mistakes when she was created. Her comments came during a once-a-month portion of Mormon Sunday services. There, members are encouraged to share feelings and beliefs. Wearing a white shirt and red tie, she said, "They did not mess up when they gave me freckles or when they made me to be gay. God loves me just this way."
Istanbul's governor has banned a gay and transgender pride march, which was supposed to take place in the city on Sunday. He cited security concerns after threats from an ultra-nationalist group. It will be the second year running that Istanbul's LGBT march, which has been described in the past as the biggest in the Muslim world, has been blocked by city authorities. March organizers said the ban legitimized what they called the hate crimes of groups like Alper and Herths. They urged the governor to reverse the decision.
The theory of evolution is being banned from Turkish high schools. A Turkish educational official recently announced the changes to the country's national curriculum, saying, quote, "We have excluded controversial subjects for students at an age unable yet to understand the issue's scientific background." The measure has reportedly already been approved by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. It calls for removing chapters on evolution from biology course books, and overall, the curriculum changes could result in less secular education in Turkish schools. That's cause for alarm for some Turkish citizens. The country was founded in the 1920s under strict secular ideals. Stripping evolution from school curriculum seems contradictory to that. Critics say this is an attempt by Erdogan to move the country toward a more Islamist governance. While Erdogan has served in Turkey's government under various roles, the number of religious vocational high schools has increased from roughly 60,000 to over 1.6 million. And other members of Erdogan's AKP party have been particularly vocal against evolution. Earlier this year, the country's deputy prime minister said, quote, "Scientifically, the theory of evolution is already an archaic and disproven theory."
Texas man making a big statement to support the president. Check this out. Kyle Courtney bought an entire billboard slamming ABC News over their coverage of alleged Russian interference in the presidential election. It says, quote, "I grew up with you. We are through. The Russians didn't elect Donald Trump. I did."
Kyle Courtney, the man behind that billboard, joins us now. Kyle, good morning to you. I guess this means you'll never, ever get back together with ABC.
It appears so.
What happened? Why did you want to put that billboard up?
I just watched too much misinformation, and, you know, I've been around a while, and I think I know the truth when I see it, and I think I know when someone is trying to pull the wool over my eyes.
Was there a tipping point? Because we've seen a lot of this coverage. What was the tipping point for you?
Donald Trump being elected by the Russians was kind of the tipping point for me.
Because you're someone who went out and voted for him, and so you're making the point that, no, it was us, the voters, that elected President Trump. It was not the Russians, right?
That's correct.
Late Friday, CNN deleted a story from its website claiming Senate investigators were looking into a Russian investment fund whose chief executive met with a member of President Trump's transition team. The outlet later issued a retraction in the story's place. The now deleted story cited a single unnamed source who claimed that the Senate Intelligence Committee was looking into a, quote, $10 billion Russian investment fund whose chief executive met with a member of President Donald Trump's transition team 4 days before Trump's inauguration.
Nancy Pelosi's time as the House Minority Leader might be winding down. New York Representative Kathleen Rice and a group of Democrats met privately Thursday to brainstorm ways to replace the Democratic House Leader. Pelosi has been the target of campaign advertisements aimed at weakening the party's brand, including the recent special election in Georgia's 6th District.
Pelosi supports higher taxes, and Jon Ossoff is on her side.
Republicans, on the other hand, want Pelosi to keep her job. Her left-wing agenda is easy for the GOP to attack, something they'll likely keep doing. President Donald Trump weighed in Thursday, tweeting, "I certainly hope the Democrats don't force Nancy P. out. That would be very bad for the Republican Party." Pelosi says she has no plans to step down, and Democrats haven't found any viable replacements yet. Pelosi has led the Democratic Party since 2003, and replacing her wouldn't be easy. In 15 years, she's raised almost $570 million for Democratic campaigns. That includes over $140 million for the 2016 election cycle.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
On Friday, Johnny Depp apologized for joking about assassinating Donald Trump during an appearance at a large festival in Britain. It is the latest example of artists using violent imagery when dealing with the president. In reference to the death of Abraham Lincoln by John Wilkes Booth in 1865, Depp asked the crowd at Glastonbury Festival when was the last time an actor assassinated a president. The 54-year-old Pirates of the Caribbean star then added, "I want to clarify, I am not an actor, I lie for a living. However, it has been a while, and maybe it is time." In a statement Friday, Depp said, "I apologize for the bad joke I attempted last night in poor taste about President Trump. It did not come out as intended, and I intended no malice. I was only trying to amuse, not to harm anyone."
Hackers tried to access user accounts on the UK Parliament's network Friday night. It wasn't immediately clear where the attack came from, but it followed a report from The Times that Russian hackers had gotten hold of government officials' email addresses and passwords and traded them online. Authorities are working with the National Cybersecurity Center to determine the method of the attack. Initial reports are that it was a sustained and determined attempt to access all parliamentary user accounts to find weak passwords.
After a string of terrorist attacks, Great Britain is considering arming its frontline police officers. Unlike the US or even fellow UK territory Northern Ireland, police in England and Wales generally don't carry weapons. Less than 5% are armed. But attitudes about armed police appear to be changing. While a 2006 survey found 82% of police officers in Great Britain didn't want officers to be armed, a more recent survey of London's police force found just over half said they would carry a gun if asked. England has seen several recent terror attacks, including one in which an attacker stabbed and killed an officer guarding Parliament. Even if the police want more firearms, it would be difficult and costly to purchase and distribute the guns and train police to use them. A spokesperson for the UK's National Police Chiefs Council, which will make the final decision on if officers should have firearms, said, quote, "These are early stage discussions, not yet at a phase of formal proposals."
Norway's decision to extend the presence of U.S. Marines on its soil will worsen relations with neighboring Russia and could escalate tensions on NATO's northern flank, the Russian embassy in Oslo told Reuters on Saturday. Some 330 Marines will be stationed in Norway until the end of 2018, the government said on Wednesday, doubling the length of what was initially billed as a one-year trial period. "We consider that this step contradicts Norwegian policy of not deploying foreign military bases in the country in times of peace," the Russian embassy wrote in a statement to Reuters.
A petition has been circulating in Canada calling on the government to terminate the country's military missions to Iraq and Syria. The petition has been launched by the Hamilton Coalition to Stop the War. It says Canadian military aircraft have violated international law by conducting airstrikes over Syria. The petition also urges Ottawa to resume diplomatic relations with Damascus and lift anti-Syria sanctions. This comes as Canadian media have voiced concern that the country's jets could be caught in a dispute between the U.S. and Russia. Moscow has warned that it will track coalition planes operating west of the Euphrates River as potential targets after the U.S. shot down a Syrian government warplane on Sunday. Canada has been part of the U.S.-led coalition against Daesh in Iraq and Syria since 2014.
Well, video has emerged online from Syria showing a member of the White Helmets rescue group allegedly handing the decapitated bodies of executed Syrian soldiers.
Well, since this graphic video was posted on Twitter, people online have been outraged by it. And in fact, I believe we can now show you the video, a blurred version of it once again. So it was reportedly filmed in the southern Syrian province of Daraa. And in this video, we purportedly see a man wearing a T-shirt with the White Helmets logo. And he's apparently helping a group of people remove a number of bodies off of a truck. And judging on the uniforms on these bodies, well, they're most likely either Syrian soldiers or pro-government fighters. And in fact, at the end of the video, what we see is this man with a White Helmets T-shirt holding a Syrian flag that was pulled out from the bodies. But since this video has emerged, well, the White Helmets has distanced themselves from this incident, confirming that this man, although he was a White Helmets member, but he's since been fired because he's violated the code of conduct of the group. Referring specifically to this video that was posted, well, they say the man was acting independently and not in the capacity as a White Helmets member. But despite the ongoing criticism on White Helmets, the Western mainstream media has been praising the White Helmets as heroes, and a film documenting their work has even won an Oscar earlier this year. And what these mainstream media reports often omit is the fact that White Helmets have been accused before repeatedly of their alleged ties to al-Nusra, a terrorist group operating in Syria.
Multiple attacks have claimed dozens of lives in Pakistan. On Friday, June 23rd, twin explosions killed at least 25 people in Parachinar and injured at least 100 more. The BBC reports the second blast occurred as emergency crews rushed to assist those injured by the first. One hospital official told Dawn newspaper his facility was not equipped to handle so many casualties. Parachinar is a city of 50,000 in Pakistan's northwestern corner, and Friday reportedly marked the third time this year it's been rocked by deadly explosions. Earlier in the day, a suicide car bomber struck at a police checkpoint in Quetta, reportedly killing at least 13 people. Several police officers are believed to be among the dead. Reuters also reports at least 2 groups have claimed responsibility for the Quetta attack, none for Parachinar. Meanwhile, 4 more police officers were reportedly killed Friday on the other side of the country in Karachi.
An imminent attack on the Grand Mosque in Mecca was prevented by Saudi security forces on Friday. A suspect blew himself up in a nearby neighborhood when his home was surrounded by security forces. 5 other suspects, including 1 woman, were arrested. The Grand Mosque is the largest mosque in the world, and it surrounds one of the holiest sites in Islam. Millions of worshippers make the pilgrimage to the Grand Mosque during the annual Hajj.
In South Korea, thousands of protesters have marched near the American embassy in Seoul, accusing U.S. President Donald Trump of forcing their country to deploy the anti-ballistic missile defense system known as THAAD. The protest came just before the country's new president, Moon Jae-in, heads to Washington for his first meeting with Trump. The protesters include residents of the southeastern county of Seongju, where the controversial system is being deployed. They say it's a health and environmental hazard. The system was approved by Moon's ousted predecessor, Park Geun-hye. Parts of the system are already in place, but Moon suspended any further work to carry out an environmental impact assessment.
Making a splash on the streets of Manila. People in the Philippines' capital have been getting wet in this year's water festival on the Feast of St. John the Baptist. For the suburb of San Juan, it's a tribute to its namesake and patron saint who Christians believe baptized Jesus Christ.
Since the Greenfall Tower blaze that took place on June 14th, British officials have begun to conduct a series of tests on 600 high-rises across England. On Friday, residents from 27 high-rise apartments were evacuated after the buildings failed the fire safety test. Following the evacuation, Prime Minister Theresa May was forced to issue an apology for the government's slow response to the situation. She told Sky News, "In some cases, it's possible to take mitigating action." She continued to say, "In others, it's been necessary for people to move out on a temporary basis, and that is what happened in Camden last night."
A wildfire has been menacing Salt Lake City, Utah for nearly a week, doubling in size for the second night in a row. As extreme heat creates challenges for firefighters, the blaze has continued to torch more homes that residents have already evacuated. So far, the fire in Utah has charred 43 square miles and has destroyed 13 homes. According to a Forest Service spokesperson, at least 700 people have fled their homes since Saturday.
In the race against time in southwest China to save the lives of some 120 people, rescuers are starting to win victories. A landslide swept into the village of Xinmo in Sichuan, burying some 60 homes and a hotel. But an entire family of 3 has been pulled out of the debris. Rescuers are now trying to reach the other buried people. Many were also injured. We heard a strange noise at the back of our house and it was a bit loud. The wind was blowing into the room, so I wanted to close the door. When we came out, the water flow washed us away instantly. The slide took out 1.6 kilometers of road and a 2-kilometer stretch of river, with a mixture of rocks, mud and water, as a high mountain face failed and crashed into the valley floor. Many power lines are also cut.
Where Dubai is going, it doesn't need roads. Dubai's Roads and Transport Authority, or RTA, said June 19th it will start testing autonomous air taxis later this year. That's right, the RTA teamed up with German company Volocopter to test pilotless flying taxis for the next 5 years. The test is part of Dubai's effort to make a quarter of all its transportation driverless or pilotless by 2030. Volocopter's air taxi is all electric with 18 rotors and room for 2 people. It has a top speed of 100 kilometers per hour and can stay airborne for 30 minutes. The craft reportedly charges in under an hour and for added safety has independently operating battery systems and a full aircraft parachute. There are currently no guidelines for how the air taxis will operate, but the RTA said it was working with the Dubai Civil Aviation Authority to establish them.